Hi, Lauren. Hi. Hi, Eden. Oh, wait, there's Eden. Hi, guys. I'm still trying to make it so people don't have to go into the waiting room, and I don't know why I can't see that. I Googled it yesterday and I can't see that option. How are you all? Silent.
Good. How are you? I was trying to figure out how to unmute myself for a second.
Oh, sometimes it's like, where is it?
Yeah.
I'm okay. I have a son who's a senior in high school, and he's starting to hear back from colleges, and so
Oh wow. Yeah.
a little crazy. I mean,
Yeah, that is nerve-wracking, huh?
yeah, and then I started to kind of feel like a little bit sad about it,
Yeah.
and not a little bit, not a little bit. And I was talking to a woman who works at the high school, and
Uh-huh.
and she was like, "Well, I actually think it's probably a really good idea for these California kids to get out of California." And she's like, "I'm from California. My husband or her boyfriend's from California." And she's like, "And we've never left."
Yeah.
And she's like, "And I wish we had." And I'm from Nebraska. So
Okay.
I lived on the East Coast, and then we lived in New York and DC, and then we moved to
Yeah.
California. So I didn't come to California until the year 2000. And had I
Okay.
known California existed, I probably wouldn't have wanted to go any other place either.
Right.
But so glad I did. And
Yeah.
so it was a good thing for her to say that, like,
Yeah.
even if it's not, you know, everything's perfect or whatever next fall, it's still, depending on where he would go, probably worth at least.
The experience. Yeah. Did he apply kind of all over and
He applied to a lot of California schools. He applied to, um, let's see, he applied to San Francisco State, which I'm like, oh,
okay.
and then just a bunch of, like, he applied to Berkeley and Santa
Okay.
Cruz and
Yep.
Cal Poly, because
Yep.
he's interested in fashion design. He's
Oh, awesome.
interested in industrial design. He's also
Okay.
interested in architectural, but he's also interested in, like, the environmental aspects of all of these.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of, I think, interesting things that he might want to do. He also applied to Pratt, Pratt
Okay.
in Brooklyn,
Yep.
and also to SCAD,
Oh,
Savannah
nice.
College of Art and Design.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he got accepted to SCAD.
Oh, great. That's amazing.
Yeah. So he's
Wonderful school.
he yeah, he could decide to go to Georgia, which I'm sure he never, thought about doing. Even
Yeah.
though I lived in Georgia. I lived in Atlanta for 5 years, and I thought it was great. It was fun.
That's
Um,
awesome. I was we were traveling in the south of France, and SCAD has a campus out in Lacoste, which is this little village.
that's so
And it
interesting. I was just looking at that, and I'm like, what
yeah,
is this? Okay.
yeah, and my husband and I were kind of staying in a village nearby, and we just kind of were exploring around there. And we drove into this town, and you kind of go up, and it's just the school. And so we were like, what a cool experience. Cause we actually went and people were doing like residencies there where they just like, they're all artists and they're all have kind of like, there were these little caves essentially, and they were just practicing their craft. And that was kind of like their semester there. And I thought, what a cool like experience. I would have loved to do something like that and call, like especially like in this beautiful, just inspiring place. But
Right. Oh,
yeah, I thought it was really
I'm
neat.
gonna look that up online and just
Yeah.
photos and show it to him because
Yeah,
I
you should.
like when you go and you look, you look at the campuses and you're like tuition and fees, and you're like
Right.
this campus, this campus, this campus, and you're like the cost, like,
Yep. Hmm.
oh, what
Yeah. It
that?
was really cool.
Okay, interesting. Very
Yeah,
interesting.
I thought that was fun that they had that program out there.
Well, and I would also love to do a city college
Hmm.
study abroad
Yeah.
proposal because I'm gonna hook up with some people who are like on the board, and I think it would be like you could do like a 2-week program, like we could do
Right.
a spring break program or like a semester program.
Yeah,
Or
that would be amazing.
I know, and I think it would be so fun to have kind of interdisciplinary thing, where
Hmm.
not just interior design, it's sort of like culture,
Right.
architecture, maybe some like flea markets and furniture.
Yeah, that would be so cool.
Yeah.
I love that
And then
idea.
food, like
Hmm.
be like a
Hmm.
whole like kind of immersive
Yep.
situation, I think would be great for me. It would be it would be great for
For
everybody.
all of us too.
It'd be just like really fun for everybody. Um, so yeah. Well, okay, it's 7:24 and um I have some interesting Baroque. I'm gonna do Baroque and Rococo. Rococo, some people like to say. I'm going to share my screen here. Um, and hold on, I need to go back. All kinds of stuff. So here we are. We're basically 17th century. Um, so one of the things to think about in terms of the difference or just sort of the feeling is the Renaissance is a little like more architectonic, like a little chunkier. So when you see like lots of wood and wood ceilings and carvings and things like that, and just overall like the furniture looking really chunky like this, and then the walls and the ceilings, like that's definitely um, like a Renaissance aspect of it. The tricky thing now is that architecture, interiors, and furniture kind of starts like bleeding all together. So just because it's the period of a certain style doesn't mean what you're seeing is necessarily going to be, because it's still, things are still designed and they stay that way and they stay popular for a long time. So you might have something that's like a Renaissance interior, and then you'll have Baroque furniture, and maybe like other aspects of Baroque, like sculpture or things like that. And then you might have like a little bit of neoclassical kind of like sneaking in there. So it's not like, it makes sense, right? It's just not all cut and dried. So we'll look at overall motifs, and we'll look at sort of like the overall themes that identify. Um, and then this is Louis the 13th. And so Italy, um, the craftsmen, the trades, people would come over, would travel all around Europe because they were amazing tradespeople, amazing artisans, and so they would go all over. So Italy really influenced much of the look, especially France. And then oh whoops. So um, Renaissance influenced, and these are classical lines, very architectonic. You've got the frieze at the top, and you've got the paneling very richly carved. And then when things start to curve, a little bit. That's where the Baroque is kind of sneaking in. So right here, you're seeing really blocky, chunky pieces. Like I'm loving this faceted carving, on the doors and the paneling. I think it's just really gorgeous and cool, very like chunky. And then you start to get like um, the carvings are so uh, complex. So you'll start to see S curves, C curves. You'll start to see twists, like here, right here, which is like sort of embedded into the side. These are barley twists. And then you'll start to see a lot of things made in like a darker wood, which is walnut. And then the carvings are so complex, animals, people, deep moldings, um, carved. You see these really beautifully shaped metal ornaments. And if we're looking at the, I gotta move all this stuff, the Louis the 13th. So this is really like kind of Renaissance, um, sort of Renaissance style, like kind of blocky, right? But then it's kind of that fancy carving is kind of coming into there and it's making it, slightly more delicate. And see here, you've got the twisting, you've got the curve of the armrest and these, I can't even see what these are. They're like really, like acanthus leaves, all, on the feet and on the arms. So Baroque, really is that time where it's sort of like Beauty and the Beast furniture, where if it looks like it could start dancing and singing, that's it. Um, and then this is like some close-ups of these carved figures, faces, scrolls, barley twists, paneling. Um, so really complex. And then you start to see these S curves and C curves. So you've got like these really definitely that C curve, and we've got the S curve on the leg here. And this line drawing is a little bit more clear. And then you've got very ornately carved stretchers. And these stretchers, these that cross, these are called saltire stretchers. And they talk about it in the book. Um, and they have quite a few pretty good, examples of those saltire stretchers. And one of the really, I think, interesting, fascinating things about the Baroque period is when you think about the Renaissance had more of like a, oh my gosh, so fascinated with the classical style. So, David statue is very, classical, and his weight is very evenly distributed. He's on his right leg, but you also see his lifted left hand, his left hand, and he's looking towards the left. So it's a very sort of controlled, symmetrical looking statue. But then you start to see this David, Bernini's David. He is like in the middle of fighting Goliath, and he's probably like going to throw a rock at his head or something like that. And look at his face. His face is really in this very concentrated, in the moment kind of feeling, like a heightened level of emotion, physical, his anatomy is definitely like, pushed to the limit. And his balance is off, right? There's no longer this straight up and down. He's really on his right leg. He's leaning forward and he's twisting, so this is definitely like a great example of the heightened drama of the Baroque period. And when you start to look at all these statues, you really start to see, sometimes it's water splashing, or, a person like, with a lot of emotion or a lot going on, or a lot of passion going on. And this is a great example too, this lidded picture, just in terms of the folds and the drama going on. And there's like a whole feeling in both of these works, like of motion. And that's a big takeaway. There's a lot of motion happening. There's either emotion or there's actual physical movement and emotion. Um, and we'll start to see a lot of that kind of thing happening. Okay, so just sort of like a little bit of a comparison here. English Baroque. We've got, you know, the English. It it didn't dilute. It didn't kind of like come down to them as passionately as it did to Italy and France. So still, there's a lot of like squared off. The stretchers are not intricately carved. The artisans weren't as accomplished, and you have a little bit of um, a wave kind of pattern, but not a whole lot of S curves and drama. And it just wasn't considered to be work like a workable sort of design element at the time. Um, and then the English, the Jacobean, a little bit more. I just noticed that seat was broken. A little bit more flourishes here. The stretchers are a little bit fancier. The legs are carved a little bit more intricately. But then here you've got, the sleeping chair with the wings that keep the drafts away from your face. You can also sleep in it. It probably does recline the back at least a little bit. And then you've got the stretchers and the barley twists, and you've got little cupids with those little wings. So really, really intricately carved. Um, and then you notice here that's definitely straight up and down. Nothing heavily upholstered. This is way more comfortable. And then one great thing to know in terms of these open armchairs, these are fatoules. This was made of gilded walnut with velvet and like what's called a bullion fringe. And then these are intricately carved. This looks very pixelated right here. Um, so again, like the C scrolls, and then the stretchers, and then the gilt um, painted with gold. Um, so definitely, oopsie, sorry, this arm style with these C curves, definitely a Baroque image and motif. So now let's just jump into Louis XIV, the Sun King. This is one of my favorite sort of episodes. So I think he was probably about 22. He was just really young. Louis XIV was really young. He There was a very powerful financial minister that worked for the French monarchy. His name was Nicolas Fouquet, and he had a lot of money. He was very very powerful, and Louis XIV knew he was a very powerful person. He was also very intelligent, very cultured, and so he had this chateau, Vaux Vicomte, and it's about 34. I think it's like 34 miles. I would love to visit it. It's beautiful. It's like 34 miles of, I think it's like southeast of Paris. So like at that point, probably felt like a really long way away, like a country house. So this was a really important sort of development in the whole idea of designing a comprehensive property. So the gardens, the exterior, the interior, the furniture, the art, everything complemented each other. And it was pretty much, one of the first times that it was sort of like a like intellectually understood idea of doing something so grand, so so amazing, bringing in the best architects, the best designers, and all working collaboratively on a project. And apparently it was just, took everyone's breath away. And he had a party, and to his defense, I think he thought he was honoring the king. But what happened was, um, the king was extremely jealous, and just didn't want all of this attention to be paid, to this guy. And so, um, what this meant in terms of interior design was that there were principles of balance that were part of the whole Renaissance idea. The exterior of the house fits into the overall landscape, and they each complement, the other. And then, really, really ornate, Baroque exaggerations. And so, the oh, hold on, sorry. So this is the floor plan. So, um, each of these rooms don't necessarily lead to the next, but you can't, and we're going to talk about this later. Just notice that you can't walk along a hallway really kind of unnoticed, and get to the room you want to get to. These kinds of houses were not places where you could be sneaky or be private. So, and we're going to talk about this later. In order to get through, you had to go through rooms. In order to like get to the grand salon, you'd have to go through here, or you'd have to go through here, and everybody would, see you. There was no like hallway or anything like that. But each room had its own use and its own like groupings of furniture that matched and coordinated to the color scheme, to the paint, to the, upholstery. And, this was a really important and really like huge thing. So, like, for example, this is a game room, gilded walls with beautiful painted paneling and, shutters. Now, you're not going to take this, candelabra pedestal and out and put it into a different room. It doesn't match. Everything matches and it belongs in this room. And if you think about, um, having a full suite of furniture that completely matches a room, I think would feel, and also look beautiful as you look out into the gardens. I think it would feel like kind of, revolutionary. Um, this is, the oval salon where you could, proceed through, and everybody could, look at you wearing your like, amazing clothes. Um, and if you notice, so it's like we've got these richly carved plaster statues that look, not that different from the caryatids that we saw in Greece. And then we've got that architectonic, um, aspects, and the pilasters here on the walls. And then we've got all of this marble and busts, as you go down the windows. Um, so then, of course, um, Versailles existed, um, and so he wanted to make it, the most amazing. After going to the chateau of Nicolas Fouquet, he wanted to create his own showplace. And so, as the absolute monarch, he set the styles. Um, France was, the place to be, and had, the most like trend setting in terms of design and architecture and fashion. Um, and, very proud of it. And it was, part of their power. Um, and it was definitely the height of the French, decorative arts. And you see like the exteriors, very, very important. The gardens are very, very important. And just the size and the sheer, grandeur of it would just pretty much intimidate anybody. And what happened to Nicolas Fouquet is that he, shortly after he unveiled his chateau, and I don't remember how shortly after, he was basically arrested on like embezzlement or something like that, which he may have embezzled, like who knows, but he was basically like taken away and lost his power. And then he was in a like his trial. It was like trumped up charges, and his trial lasted 3 years. So that's what happens when you try to show up the king, apparently. Um, and this is very um, Baroque. Notice all of these very large. They're not even relief sculptures. I mean, they're standing off of the plaster, and but they have a lot of the emotion, a lot of drama, like very dramatic looking statues and paintings everywhere. And just like, I don't know how many kinds of marble, how many colors, um, of marble. Um, lots of materials used to show wealth. And then this is the Hall of Mirrors. So obviously, mirrors are really, really important because they reflect light back, they reflect candlelight back. So having all of these mirrors and a lot of mirrors just in rooms in general was really important. And so this Hall of Mirrors is 240 feet by 34, and it's 43, the ceiling is 43 feet high. And it's the ceilings are painted. So notice that it's broken up into panels, and then the scenes are painted, and then the paneling is gilded, and then that's definitely like a Baroque sort of telltale sign. And then here we've got basically like a frieze, and decorated not with a little bit of pilasters, and then Corinthian columnar tops, sorry. And then you have the arched windows that are mirroring, literally mirroring these arches that look outside. And then you've got all the gold. You've got the little putis, which are like the babies, right, holding up the pedestals, and all the gilding, and then all these chandeliers that would have to be pulled down and lit, all of the time, and all of these candles. So yeah, so this is where they would do their processional, and the court could, see the king, and they could look at each other. And I wanted to show how similar this style is to the Davanzati in Florence, that Renaissance house that we looked at. Was it just last time? You notice those arches and the Corinthian columns, but then this is just, way more, literally festooned. But then when we get into Rococo, it's just things get a little bit different and not as heavy. So if you think of Renaissance as literally very heavy with the wood and the chunky carving, but then Baroque kind of toning that wood and that heaviness down a little bit, but then the decoration becomes really a lot more exaggerated and a lot more dramatic. And then there's more materials, there's more gilding, there's more marble and plaster and things that they're attaching. Things that they're attaching, like up here on top and onto the ceiling. Boole was, and his father were cabinet makers to the king, and they were really very skilled with wood and with metal. So, these are Sphinx-like mounts on the side. And apparently, we're really good about having the metal, having the gold, shaping it, working it, and then not really wasting a lot of it. And you notice back to when we were talking about Greek, we've got guilloche here. Um, and then we've got like the vines, almost the ronceau from the Renaissance, looking motifs. Um, and then very decorative. And what I want you to pay attention to is it's very symmetrical. So if you take these pieces, cut them in half and fold them over, they match, which is not always the case for Rococo. So I think that's a really interesting thing to think about in terms of being able to tell apart something that has a more Rococo feel as opposed to a Baroque feel or a Renaissance feel. A Renaissance will be, pretty much symmetrical. The one side will match the other, but then when we see Rococo, they don't always match. So these pieces are for specific things, like maybe a writing desk for the king, and a furniture placement starts to become more, static. They will, however, they will move things just for general purposes. They will have things moved to the perimeters, and then when people are coming in or there's an event, then they will take certain pieces and push them into the middle or pull them aside. And then this one, I think this is an amazing piece with all of these gilt, bronze mounts. Here's the example of the saltire stretchers. And then notice that these legs are a little straighter. And then you've probably seen these before this. So this is a chaise lounge. And this was the type of furniture that would be placed near a bed or at the foot of the bed or in a bedroom so that you could, just lay down or sit down and rest or take a nap. Then this is a little bit more delicate, example of a chair with the saltire. I think I actually really like this one. I think it's really pretty. This is another like fauteuil example of a fauteuil, but really delicate. But you still have the C curve. You still have these, complex carvings on the legs. And then one of the interesting things. So if you went to court, I don't know if any of you have seen. I'm not sure if I've had you or talked to anybody about watching Marie Antoinette. There's the Marie Antoinette that's the Kirsten Dunst, isn't it? There's a really interesting scene. Maybe you've seen it. Just talking, it kind of shows the really awkward, weird sort of court protocol that they had to deal with. Like really, there was just absolutely no privacy. There was just a lot of like political power plays, like mind games that were played a lot, and it seems like it would be awful. But one of the things that happened when you were at court was you may be invited to sit down, you may not be invited to sit down. It was pretty common to maybe not be allowed to sit down. And you can imagine that probably there was always that one person, and it was probably always the same person that didn't get allowed to sit. So if you think about the power of like letting somebody sit or not, and what, being allowed to sit in an actual piece of furniture, what kind of a big deal that would be. And here's I really like the way these pieces look, the floor and the furniture and the walls. So marquetry is a technique used to create complex geometric designs. Basically, all of these pieces, when they're different colors, obviously they're different species of wood. And, the way the artist was able to do it is you cut them in different ways and you can create, geometric designs and optical illusions, basically, and fitting them in different ways. I mean, I think this one in particular with showing the shadows, um, almost like a three-dimensional trompe l'oeil quality. It's really, really beautiful. And then the way this one sort of fits in, it's like a console table attached to a wall, which has its own design. But some of the chevrons or they look like tumbling blocks actually are shared by this particular piece, and then it even falls onto the floor. So a lot of very like graphic things that even today I think we would still like appreciate and like think was really cool. Except now we'd probably do this, we would express this in tile, or something else. It's probably a little costly to do this type of thing, um, you know, in our homes on a regular basis. Although some people do it, and you can specify it. You would just, go to your flooring person and just say, I want to do this like really cool design, like in the middle, like when you walk in, do this like really beautiful tumbling blocks design with three different species of wood, and they would be happy to do it for you. But I love it. I think it's really, really beautiful. And so parquetry is the floor and the marquetry is the furniture um, method. And you see these types of floors all the time, right? This is kind of run on the bias. Well, actually, the whole thing is kind of run on the bias, and just a really like pretty pattern. And so yeah, this is another kind of veneering. And again, going back to this, these are all pieces of really thin veneer. So it's basically, just shaved off the it's just thin little chips, right? Um, so oystering, it's a type of marquetry. So it's like cut sections of wood and then you lay them side by side and you match them. So obviously they've got, the size of the drawer indicates the size of the oystering, and it's just like really gorgeous. Um, and then we can see these textiles. Again, France is still using the fleur-de-lis. This looks like, it's some sort of brocade and probably like, a silk, and maybe even a metallic thread to create that fleur-de-lis pattern. Like a really beautiful, um, beautiful color. And then so woven carpets. Now they weren't putting carpets necessarily on the floor yet until um, basically like the neoclassical period. But this was, a carpet or a tapestry that would be hung. And notice it's like, you've got the crown for the king. You've got the herald. It's everything showing, the power of the monarchy. And then, lots of expensive crystal everywhere. Um, but basically part of the metaphor for, the Sun King, and then also enabled everybody to see at night, and very sparkly. So then looking at motifs. So sometimes the Sphinx head is also called gain. And then it's basically like just showing a head or a torso. So Gaine. And then you'll see satyrs, shells, scrolls, rosettes, and all kinds of like foliage and laurel and oak leaves here, and ram's heads. And then we looked at putti, like the little like Cupid or the little babies. And then so much motifs, in terms of the Sun King and his head. So I think I said them all. So here's some examples of high Baroque, just so you can kind of like train your eye and see a lot of things. You notice insanely tall and the hierarchy. We've got the doorways, we've got the pediments, and then we go up, and then we have the carved, sort of framed, painted panels, and then we go up another level. And we've got like almost like the dental molding up here, and then we've got a fake banister or baluster, and then we've got yet another painting with more framing. So this is definitely the high Baroque with insanely decorated and heaviness to it, but it doesn't have that wooden, stained wood heaviness of the Renaissance, and it's way more advanced in terms of the art, the artisanal skill. This one is a mirrored room with the carvings and the paneling, and then the painted, almost the entire ceiling. Well, it's basically painted. This looks to me like, well, there's some architectonic aspects up here. You see like a pilaster and an edge, but definitely this is a really interesting sort of like it's like a mixture of the Trompe-l'oeil paintings that sort of like fool the eye and the architectonic, aspects of the high Baroque. And then here's some, Roman. Look with these beautiful columns, and then you get the pilasters on both sides with statues and carvings and paintings on the ceiling. So we're going to kind of push into Rococo. So what was happening at this point was houses were getting a little bit smaller. So there was a little bit more of like a room layout and plan, but the houses were a little bit smaller. Oops, sorry. And there was sort of a feeling that having more intimate, more comfortable spaces was more desired rather than these giant show places. It was one thing to have everything be like really beautiful and expensive, and that was fine. But you could still have it be like a little bit smaller, a little bit more intimate. So when you think about Rococo as opposed to Baroque, the mindset is shifting for cultural reasons. There was a lot of reasons, but the mindset shifts from large showplaces to smaller homes and actual human sizing of furniture and rooms. So let's take this actually really beautiful floor plan here, and a really interesting, I think this layout is, I like to look at these kind of drawings. So I think it really shows like what is actually really possible in terms of like room shaping, just in general as a designer, that you can have negative, positive spaces, that you don't have to use every little bit of a space. Like if you want to thicken something up, you can, in order to make like a beautiful room. Like, in reality now, I mean, these thicker areas are probably, closets or workspaces or sort of utilitarians or plumbing chases or things like that. But the way they've done it and the way they've, created it, it all just looks really great. Like this curved room is just like really, really beautiful. And then you have this like curved vestibule that's similar in size, but or not similar in size, similar in shape, but not quite the same. Um, so I don't know. I think these are really interesting to look at and to see, how spaces can be um, laid out and shaped, and they don't have to be like the way we always think they need to be shaped. Um, so furniture is rooms are a little bit more intimate. They're smaller, um, and furniture is a little bit more is starting to get a little bit more comfortable. And then there's a focus on intimacy and relationships. So you notice when we talk about things getting curved, the leg starts to curve into what's called a cabriole leg. And if you notice here, we've got a shell right here. Oops. And it's curved. And then even these legs, there's no more saltire stretchers. Um, they're using the base of the chair here to for support, and they're curving every single leg, and you've got like a delicate little hoof right there. And so design is the chairs are a little bit smaller, they're not quite as grand. You might be able to drag this a little easier to get, close to your friends so you could, gossip or whatever. So more conducive to like intimate conversation. And if you notice like this, okay, so the fauteuil chair has the open arms. You can put your hands through them. The bergère chair is just like an armchair, like an upholstered armchair. It's not open. And this is just really, really cute and small. It's much, smaller than a lot of things that we've seen. And we've got these delicate, little curves and still fancy, still very like complex and richly designed and gilded and beautiful upholstery, but it's just a little smaller um, with scrolls, and it looks like we've got like wheat. It looks like a little you know design of shafts of wheat. um, and then here this is a canapé, which is basically like a little sofa, right? But it's an open armed sofa with curved legs, curved arm, but it's upholstered, right? That arm is still upholstered. We've got a little upholstered arm because we want to be comfortable. And I want you to notice the symmetry. If you cut it in the middle and you fold it over, it's gonna look, it's gonna match. And these are called, so this is a chess piece, this is a case piece, but you notice that curve. So this is called a Bombay commode or chest. And I mean, gorgeous, inlaid, different species of wood, lots of work goes into this. Both of these pieces, these are, inlaid bronze or um, gilt. And look at this, the work, done here in terms of the veneer and the matching and the marquetry. Like the hardware all goes together with the wood and the veneering and the mounts. So these are called ormolu mounts, and different species of wood goes into that. So these are also, not as like the pieces that we saw at the very beginning of these slides. I would go back, but it's going to take forever. Those big giant Renaissance pieces, um, you know, are worked by, artisans that knew what they were doing. But then this is like way more technological, like skill and artistry going into this in terms of all the materials that are being used for this. One of the things that I think the book does a terrible job is talking about the Silk Road. So we're going to be thinking about projects and what people want to really focus on. And I'd really love it if somebody, it doesn't have to be just one person. Like there's different parts of the Silk Road that you can talk about and that you can study. And so, because not only is the Silk Road important for the things that people traded and bought and introduced, but it's important in terms of ideas that were exchanged and the reason why the Dark Ages ended. So it's hugely important. But here are some of these like really beautiful pieces. So this marquetry, with a beautiful scene in different species and so like realistic looking and three-dimensional and gorgeous on all of these panels. And then we've seen these legs before, these the cup and vase legs, but I love how they, have the scenes and the designs on them, but really gorgeous. It's lacquer and enamel technique. So here we're looking at like an English wing chair, which is much evolved from that sleeping chair, that red velvet sleeping chair that may have reclined. And this, with the curving arms and the curving legs and, even the curving kind of side that would protect you from a draft. So definitely quite an evolution happening there. These feet are called bun feet here, which are really common. And then I think we've seen this before, but you notice how it's the back, the artisan is not quite as good as, some of the other ones that we've seen where it's just like they're sort of just ignoring the back and really thinking mostly about the front. So I want to look at and here's an example of just an American colonial, secretary desk and how watered down the design becomes once it gets to America. Like you've got the scrolls and the sort of intricate design on the hardware, but that's, about as much as they're going to do. And then there's, a little bit of, these are called bracket feet. But then this is obviously something that, cost a lot more money than this piece, and had a lot more, intricate design in terms of the legs. But this is definitely like in that category, when you think about the Beauty and the Beast, cabinetry, and, sort of the feeling of a little bit of movement could occur. And then this is how the period expresses itself into like going into American and colonial furniture pieces. So you've got those same curved legs, and you've got the dental molding, but it's very much sparser, not as decorated. But you've got, things like the cabinet with, the somewhat broken pediment, and you've got another like broken pediment here, which was sort of the style. And then the wing-back chairs with the curved arms and legs. So thinking about, so this is a yoke back chair. And then this is inspiration for this type of chair, which is a Rococo chair. And you notice that we add the broken shell here to the splat, and you've got the shell motif here, and then you've got the ball, the claw and the ball foot, and then this curved knee is definitely a motif or like a giveaway of the Rococo period. And then Thomas Chippendale, who was an English furniture designer, basically how he came to prominence was that he wrote a book, created a book like these that had all of his sketches of designs, and people could, you know, buy the book and then make his designs. And you notice he has many, you know, inspired by Chinese designs. And then when we move into Louis the 15th, and we're really moving into Rococo, French Rococo, we still have, because what I want to distill for you is sort of like, how do you go from Renaissance to Baroque? And this is broad strokes, right? Because when you start looking at English or American, some certain things can get watered down. But when you're thinking like broad strokes, Renaissance has that heaviness. It has, you know, a little bit more sort of blockiness, not as delicate a hand in terms of the design and the shape of things. And then you move into Baroque, and then you get into that more, you get into a little bit more delicacy, but you're still thinking big because it's very dramatic. And there's a lot of emotion and there's a lot of drama, right? So that's where when we were looking at those high Baroque, like the German, the French, the Italian, the intensely decorated, and it's like stacks on top of stacks, like it's a cake that just keeps going and going and going. But when you get into Rococo, you're still super, super decorated. But what happens is things get a little bit more like distilled. The color softens. You're still super, super ornate. Like if you look at this room, you're insanely ornate, but the color has softened. The color becomes you might just have like a white paneling, and yes, this is gilded, and this is in no way you know, low key at all, but it is much different than that really, really insanely high ceilings. Everything's painted, we've got, you know, 5 different things going on. This is a little bit more subdued in terms of color palette and the amount of what's going on. I hope that makes sense. I think as you see more, it will start to make sense. So this, you know, we've got a painting here, right? But we don't have paintings in every single panel. We've got designs happening, but it's a little bit more toned down. And then we've got a color palette that's sort of all of a piece, which is when you think about interior design and thinking about, you know, keeping to just a more sort of comprehensive, cohesive color palette, this is where we're getting that. Okay, so one of the things we were talking about before is the fact that not everything is super symmetrical in Rococo. So what we want to think about in Rococo is we want to think about natural kind of sprawling and wild and sort of like growing out of something. It's not as unrestrained as Baroque. It's a little bit tighter, but it's a little sneakier because it's a balanced, but it's not necessarily symmetrical. So if you split this down the middle and you try to fold it in half, it wouldn't match up. This here isn't symmetrical. This curves down while this thing curves up, right? Um, this swirls this way and comes back up. This one swirls this way and one little thing comes back up. And these two don't perfectly match. I mean, it's really pretty cool. Because I'm not sure I could do this. This is not easy to do, right? It's easier to make a piece, make one side, and then make the other just the same exact way. But this is a lot harder. Um, so then the asymmetry is a dead giveaway that it's Rococo. And then the walls are just softer colors. You may use a lot of gilding and things like that, and it's definitely like there's it's festooned, but we're using a little bit softer colors. And notice not as many big chunky columns or pilasters on the wall, and you don't have that um, dado dado on the changing the horizontal. I'm sorry, I can't even talk. The horizontal. So you only start to have just a really simple molding between the wall and the ceiling, not this sort of like really chunky um, piece that's maybe switching to a new scene, above it, and then yet switching again. It's just a little less is happening. Um, and then, so if you notice this portrait, sitting in a chair, his robes, his boots, everything is just swirling around him. It's not, this chair that he's sitting in isn't perfectly symmetrical. But you see all of this beautiful material kind of floating around him, his scepter, and full of power and pageantry. And then his mistress, I think this is really interesting. So it's sort of like, very leisurely. She's floating on probably a chaise, looks like a chaise lounge. She's got a beautiful dress on. She's got a little puppy down there. She's been busy. She's educated. She knows how to write. She's writing a letter. She's reading with a candle. She's got a book open. She's aware of the world. She's got the time. She knows that. And look at all these books. But look, not symmetrical. There's a mirror. You can see her reflected in the mirror, and then not a super disciplined portrait of somebody. It's a little bit messy, right? Definitely not symmetrical. And she can throw flowers on the ground. She does not have a care in the world. So another thing, I was talking to you about the Rococo, like notice this like a little bit more casual feeling, right? These people have pulled all this furniture. They're kind of like snuggled. They look like they're gonna have like a slumber party. I mean, they're all kind of like snuggled together and they're, talking. And this furniture looks really comfortable. And it doesn't look like, one person can sit and one person doesn't. They're just sort of all like flopping together. The walls are really soft and light. There's an overall sort of palette going on. Nothing's really overwhelming. But it's definitely beautiful and, very expensive. So here's another image. Light, but no intensely painted scenes on the ceiling. It's all very decorated. It's all a plan. It's a comprehensive plan for decorating, for interior decoration. And this you would never see on the outside of the building. Whereas in the Renaissance, what you would see inside might be something you would definitely see on the outside or something very close to it. But here in the Rococo period, that's not the case. And this is really the first time that there is such a stark demarcation between what you would see on the inside versus what you would see on the outside. And look how like, delicate and, sweet these little stools are in the furniture. Even though this is, by our standards, pretty insane in terms of the decoration. So natural motifs, wild and sprawling, but it's balanced. Um, and if you look closely, you can find the asymmetry. Like here. This is pretty. This is symmetrical. But like this mirror, I don't think is. There might be some parts of it that are. This case piece, definitely not symmetrical. The gilding, I haven't really looked at this in a while. This looks pretty symmetrical, but the overall piece isn't. It has that broken pediment with the little swirl. So shells, motifs of shells, huge during Rococo. The rocaille is like a broken rock or wave, so it's kind of like a wave pattern but broken. And then S scrolls, C scrolls, curved legs, so that when you see that curved knee of that chair, that's definitely a Rococo. And then let's look at a little bit of architecture. So this is what you see, on the outside. So this is Christopher Wren. He did St. Paul's Cathedral, and very influenced by Palladio, a Renaissance architect. So we have a lot of like classical things going on. We've got the Corinthian columns. We've got the pediment, and then this is what I meant by when I was struggling with the dado, is that horizontal, basically like a datum line. If you think about Baroque and Renaissance, is definitely having that horizontal datum line that would break up different paneling from the next. Let's see what else. Lots of intense relief and carvings. This is like, to me, like an MC Escher, almost like an interior that is like the MC Escher, because there's just so many like hierarchies and amazing vaults. So you've got this, the barrel vaulting here with the carvings and the paintings here, and then you've sort of got like a partial vault here, and then another one here, and it's just gorgeous with the pilasters, and then the columns as you go back, and then really, really tall vaults. So this is Chiswick House. So definitely a very like Palladian influence, classical orders. This is even pushing towards sort of a lot of what we're going to see with neoclassical, especially with the really, really insanely restrained interiors. But you notice we're going back to Greece with the porch and the columned porch, but then you get the steps with the balusters. And then the dome and the pediment and entablature. And then on the interior, you have these beautiful niches, and then all of this like really pretty. I don't know what's happening here. really pretty gilded plasterwork. This might be my last slide here. I think it is. Okay. So the big things here are the shift from the shapes if you look here, the shapes of Renaissance going into Baroque, just a little bit more decoration, more materials, more artisanal, you know, skill and decoration overlaid by decoration. More skill, more artisanal, like, you know, just higher and higher in terms of, you know, their ability to create these shapes. But then, you know, the interiors starting to look like just interiors, not exteriors anymore. And the furniture becoming way more comfortable. But not sacrificing themselves in terms of you know, expense. And then the motifs that are really important to each period. So here we are in the Baroque, high ceilings. We've got that datum line or the dado or the entablature, whatever you want to call it. It's an architectonic sort of move, really, you know, all different, but you have it. And then you'll have the pilasters or the columns. Then as you move into Rococo, things are getting smaller. People were moving to smaller houses. It was a little tighter, more intimate, curved. I think we'll look at more American and English things. It's really fun if you guys are interested. If you go to First Dibs, 1ST Dibs, which is basically they're like an antiques kind of clearinghouse. And if you've never heard of them, that's what you're going to be doing till 2 in the morning, is just staring at all of their things. You can go in and you can just do searches, you know, Louis the 15th, Louis the 16th, Queen Anne, and just look at all kinds of really interesting like furniture pieces. I'll have you guys I have an assignment, like I think it might even be for the next class or the one after that. And it's like you can look up something that was made at the same time. Anyway, you can use First Dibs, but it's really fun, and it's like a big rabbit hole you can kind of go down, and you can learn a lot by looking at the pieces, looking at how much they cost, what they're made of, who made them, you know, who's selling them. A lot of auction houses too, like Sotheby's or Christie's, are really good too. I used to work for a company that made furniture. Their name's Luca Antiques. They actually have an LA store. I don't know if they have any other store. Well, they have one in Santa Barbara. So it's Luca Antiques, LUCCA. Anyway, they make really pretty furniture, but they used to buy stuff from this auction place called Bukowski's. So there's a lot of like auction places you can Google and just look at this stuff that they have. And then we get to Rococo. It's a little bit more delicate. The color palettes are just more controlled. They're just like a tighter palette. Like you just wouldn't have like the wild swings of a bunch of colors. all in one place. Um, you know, there was a time I really didn't appreciate Rococo because it seemed not, I don't know, it just seemed too much. But really, when you look at it in comparison and in contrast too, you really do realize that it's a little bit less of things. Um, and I like the motifs in Rococo, and I like the lack of symmetry, the sneaky lack of symmetry. Anyway, that's it for tonight. Any questions? I have a quiz that I need to edit, and then I will send an announcement saying it's up and you can take it. Again, all my quizzes, all of our homework is, as you can self-pace. I do just don't want you to get behind. And I had to email a couple people who like haven't turned in like the first drawings. I'm like, let's get that done. So that we can, you don't feel like you're too far behind, because I think drawings can make people feel a little nervous. Did anybody like my 10 bullets that I sent? Anybody look at that? I'm
I have,
obsessed.
which one? For
I sent out this announcement and I attached Tom Sax's The 10 Bullets, which literally looks like a ransom note. And it basically has his rules. He has a studio, an art studio, and he has these like kind of very strict rules about how he wants people to do things. There's even YouTube videos of it. And he has like the 10 bullets. Like he's like, keep your space neat and clean. And he's calls it knolling, Knollling. And you basically like arrange things in like a grid pattern, like your tools. And does anybody remember like Julia Child used to put all of her stuff like in a grid pattern, like on her wall with like pegboards or something like that. And the Smithsonian has her whole kitchen like rebuilt. And I always just was so fascinated. So then I just started like doing that and gridding things. And on my desk, I just have things like gridded out. I'm one of those people that if it's not out, it doesn't exist for me. Like if I put it away and everything is away, then there's nothing to do. I need to be able to see it, but I want it to be nice and neat. And so he talks about it in here, like make everything neat and clean so that you're ready to begin, when you want to be productive.
I
And then
haven't oh, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to find it. I can't find it on the mod. Is it in modules or?
it's in the if you go to it's the Indian announcement. So one of the
Oh,
recent announcements, if you go to announcements, I attached it in there.
okay. My
Yeah.
internet's super slow, so it's pulling it up.
Oh, I think well, I can email it to you, Gabby.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
I'll do that. I think you would like it.
Yeah, it sounds really cool. For some reason, the internet in my area in Ventura has been really kind of spotty, so it's
Yeah,
still rolling.
that's not cool.
Yeah.
And he gives you permission to procrastinate if you're like, if at first you don't succeed, give up immediately. And move on to something else. So, and keep a list, and just because you sent it doesn't mean it was received, which is, and get a receipt for everything, which is huge. Anyway, I liked it.
Oh, is it Tom Sachs? I found it. I found it. Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and the YouTube videos are interesting too, because it's like it has more studio rules, like take phone calls outside, don't be loud. Like, the person who's working on something is like the most important person, and you can't interrupt them. You have to leave them alone. You can't start talking about something else. It's just very like almost like, I guess he kind of does want like a shaker atmosphere. you know, where
It looks almost like a manifesto.
it was such a totally. That's a good word for it. I was like, oh, it's like a ransom note. No, it's a manifesto. Yeah. But I like the way it's like kind of scribbled. So I've just had it on my desk. I should put it up here. But I think I've spilled like a couple like beverages on it so far. Anyway, I like it. Okay, so yeah, so first dibs, that's fun to look at if you haven't done that. Cherish is good too, but Cherish isn't as expensive. So it's like overall not as like awe-inspiring, like first dibs. You know, especially like the antiques are, you know, kind of really amazing and awe-inspiring. And it can just give you, you know, it gets you like ready for that client that's like, you know, I need a 17th century Bombay chest, you know, with walnut and mahogany veneers. And you'll be like, oh, okay, no biggie. I'll find you that. All right. Well, I'll say goodnight and I'll put up the quiz and let you know when it's up. Okay.
Thank you. Have a
Yeah,
good
I
night.
actually had a question.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned something about like sharing the drawings and stuff, but the most recent two don't have, they're like not in the thread format. It's just like a submit. So are we gonna like share those somewhere?
There's ones, let's see. So the hold on, let's see. There was, yes, I do that. And I created another discussion in week, hold on. Oh, so for the ancient and medieval sketches, so I created that one, which is in week 6. So it's, yeah, so it's last week's module, and it's an upload ancient and medieval sketches, and it is a discussion, and it basically says, let's share the ancient and medieval drawings. Upload the following: upload your Greek temple elevation, upload your drawing of the Clismos chair, and upload your Gothic cathedral with motifs. So it's sort of like almost like a separate assignment, except it's not. It's just what you did before, and you'll get points for just putting it up. Does that make sense?
Wait, so the temple, do you mean like the orders?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's that, yeah, that temple elevation. Yeah, the one that where you label it, the different one.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to show my my Egyptian god motifs because it took me forever.
You want upload what you want then?
Well, yeah, no, I put it in the worksheet.
Okay.
But I'll put it on there too.
Put it on there. No, that's awesome. Okay, which one though, Eden?
Oh, well, there was like the Osiris and Anubis and Ra.
Oh yeah. Put it up there. I'll even edit this and be like, and if you have another one that you want to share it. Okay. All right. I can do that. Cool. No, I love seeing the drawings. I actually will do this every time. I've never done this before, where I've had people share their drawings with the class. I think it's really good. Yeah. All right. Well, have a good night, you guys.
Night.
Right.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.